It must be said that America's allies are many, but there's no special AI like the Republic of Korea. When they have spoken first about sending troops to Vietnam to support the fight against communism, even if the United States hasn't spoken out yet. It sounds like you're all blessed together. There is a shared, but it's not so deep down. You guys are often worried. It says to plunge into the sea of death. If there is no benefit, it is late. South Korea is so active. South Korean governments offer to send troops to Vietnam, starting from the years 194. However, by November of the same year, it was 9.5. The U.S. has not yet approved. The U.S. has not officially sent troops to Vietnam, even though the President of the Supreme Council rebuilt the nation, Park Chung-hee, during a visit to Washington, has enthusiastically repeated this offer, but the U.S. still says it in a very specific way. The U.S. rejection made Park Chung-hee a little confused, but he's determined not to give up his American conspiracy. A year after that visit, Park's government is sitting on a fire. When in Vietnam, consecutive sets of lake equipment for the Republic of Vietnam troops eat onions. South Korea is worried. The United States will abandon them for the sake of the Diem government. That's why we wanted to send troops to Vietnam. They are getting stronger in them. 9, 5 years a ripe 6, 4. Lyndon Johnson after becoming President of the United States. We've sent notes to all 25 of our allies to reduce the burden of bone and blood in public functions. The President of the United States. Ask your fellow allies. Shared responsibility with the United States on the battlefield in Vietnam. The note has just been sent, while other countries are being cautious. South Korea has shown its outrageous enthusiasm as one of the few leading countries in sending troops to Vietnam. Not only that, immediately, Park Chung-hee government, it is the most powerful of America's allies. Almost 400,000 words from mercenaries. This is not even mentioned. The figure is a comma of 1,000 house-serving women. The need for flesh for American soldiers. These soldiers and girls, they are seen in Korea as gifts, packed carefully, shipped to the place, as a way to show their loyalty. Of course, South Korea won't allow the United States, but vice versa. The two sides went out at night to agree on the benefits. The way that Korea has, can be received. In addition to economic aid, the U.S. will also become a diplomatic 7. South Korea's access to the Western market, the easiest way to say that this move by South Korea is a historic move. In addition to helping you in times of trouble, give money for rights, who doesn't like it? But the end of this happiness, the blood of many Korean soldiers, and the shame of more. 1,000 Korean women went to Vietnam, South Korean mercenary force, with armies of animals, which is the Green Dragon Tiger, has shown its savagery by conducting countless surveys for the ordinary people of Vietnam. Hands without iron, the savagery of Korean soldiers. It's explained by their human nature. When this force, they're all thieves and robbers. They were sent to Vietnam by the government to purge society. It's an arrow that hit 2 birds. Just received American aid. It just makes Korean society better by indirectly eliminating unscrupulous elements of society. It's safe to say that the Korean government has sold bones, blood and dignity of a comma, 5,000 VND. Save yourself an extremely large amount of money, and many of them be converted into scholarship parts. Training of key technical human resources necessary for the industrialization of this country. That's what it's like to sell generously. South Korea is educating its next generation. This is a disgrace to the country by giving out a monthly stipend. They all have to take an oath. It is important to remember the source of the money received. They're trying to make a face of reluctance for people to see. Because of the future of the country, your father's generation has shed blood, and women have to suffer when physically tormented. Right? It's all about the future of Korea now. But that future is exchanged for the past. Dirty can't be washed off. Put your people to death and trampled on the dignity of Korean women. It causes so much pain and anger to a nation. I didn't even consider them enemies before. When the plot is clear. Locke's words came from the Vietnam War. It has also been signed, August 2nd, 4th, a 9/6 private. Korean soldiers began to be present in Vietnam. But by the year 1966, the numbers have been greatly increased, up to 45,060 people. To the year 1968, even more terrible, when the number was 50,003 soldiers with a modest number of troops. South Korea even showed its level of play when proposing to the U.S. not arbitrarily curtail the presence of Korean soldiers in the battlefield of Vietnam. If the two parties have no prior agreement, Military District Year 1, key strategic areas assigned by the U.S. to the Korean Animal Divisions. The U.S. highly values Korean soldiers because of the warlike and malevolent abilities of the top. That's why the U.S. gave Korean soldiers to carry out operations, pacify and find destruction, to share almost half of the people and lives. The war for America, to win America's favor. South Korean troops conducted 1,170 operations, has a platoon-level size, and caused about 43 massacres of civilians. There were 13 murders per 100 people, more than 1,000. Most of them are old people, women and children. In the period from May 15, a 965, to May BA year 97 BA, this number could be even larger, with all of them being thieves and robbers and rapists. It's not hard to imagine how Korean soldiers committed that crime against humanity. They rape and kill women, burning straw, burning children alive. Broken bones of meat. The crimes of the Korean soldiers were so horrific. Bunker and through a mine. American soldiers were terrified. American soldiers are evil, but many people love children. Korean soldiers are evil. Organized evil and organized evil. The easier the prey is to play with. It's easier and more stimulating to kill, based on those massacres of innocent Vietnamese civilians. 25, 2 years, a 966. The Brown Memo was drafted by South Korea. Submit to the U.S. and sign. According to this memo, the United States is committed to providing a large number of equipment for the modernization of the Korean military, purchase of military equipment from South Korea, other necessary goods, to supply South Korean troops in Vietnam, enhance technical aid to South Korea, in all fields, to boost South Korea's exports, increase the loans of the International Development Agency, aid thanks to the support of the U.S.-South Korean economy. It took off quickly, but everything has its price. At the end of the Vietnam War, more than 5,000 soldiers were killed, 11,000 people with permanent disabilities, 100,000 people infected with Agent Orange. Soldiers and girls of old have to live with a traumatic stress disorder by the pain of war until death. Though, crimes committed by Korean soldiers against Vietnamese civilians, not once mentioned. During the long years after the war, the South Korean government quickly withheld all information, determined not to let the people know about things that aren't done by animals, that they did to the civilian population of Vietnam. But paper can't cover fire. The cloth cannot cover the holy eye. The dirty past is easy to hide. When finally, in different ways, Korean progressive public opinion has access to the truth. History, according to observation, 77.9% of South Koreans were asked. They asked their government, "We must apologize to Vietnam." However, despite the attempts to call out sorry from the Korean people of conscience, the South Korean government is determined to play the silent game. In fact, the South Korean government has spoken once in 6 years, 2 not 17. When the head of the South Korean presidential administration is Moon Jae-in, he spoke to South Korean veterans in the Vietnam War that South Korea's economic takeoff, it's partly because of their sacrifice in Vietnam, because at that time, the South Korean government decided to go to war with the U.S. The promise of 7. Diplomacy and financial aid to South Korea. However, this time the voice, it's completely bleached, and it unwittingly touched the pain of war, of Vietnam veterans. Today, while South Korea is demanding compensation from Japan for arresting women, South Korea became a sex slave during World War II, but shyly ignore the crime that they've done to civilians. Innocent Vietnam. There's a lot of abuse in there, and killed women in a very brutal way. I think they should ignore it, because even the bones and blood, people and the dignity of women in their country, they are willing to negotiate with the United States. Then a far-flung people like Vietnam, what is the point of killing and humiliating? But it's really spicy after all. I'd rather be quiet until the end. You're lying so blatantly here. It is true that the end of the cycle is here.